Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Carlton People. This is episode number 72. And today I've got a gentleman by the name of Jeremy. Jeremy, we've kind of known each other for many years, but we'd never met until recently. So I'm glad to be doing this, mate. Welcome to your episode of Carlton People.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me. Yep, good to be here.
It's I found out when we met that you've been around since, or you've been aware of the channel and everything since back in the day when it was a little podcast in Israel. So anytime I get a chance to chat to some of the OGs, I like to take the opportunity, mate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, shout out to my best mate Jordan Glick, who he was the one who showed me the show initially back in 2018. We were VCE students. It was the Brendan Bolton days of Carlton, and yeah, we needed something to I guess bring that connection with Carlton family back then, and that's where he showed me the show, and it's been great ever since.
Yes, shout out to Jordan Glick. I have to get an episode done with him as well. This is just this to make it full circle.
That's it.
Listen, let's begin because I'm really keen to understand your story. How did you become a Carlton supporter, and where does it all begin?
Yeah, ever since birth, you could say. My dad is a very, very passionate Carlton supporter. He's in his early 50s, so ever since I can remember, he would be talking about the glory days of Carlton, the premierships in the 70s and the 80s. He became a Carlton supporter. I think it was through his babysitter back when he was a child. So it wasn't really that father or mother connection through him. He had a babysitter that took him to games. And yeah, he's been extremely passionate ever since. And then that passion has just been given straight to me. And my mum's also Carlton. And now my sister is. She's started getting into football a little bit more as she's grown older now. She's 18 now, so she's starting to take an interest. Came to quite a few games with us last year, and I'm sure we'll be talking about superstitions later on. But when she hit the football with us, we were always winning, and there weren't many wins, but whenever she came, we won. So we tried to get her to as many games as we could.
You're right. It's very hard to find a good luck charm with this club as a fan over the last few years. So the whole family are navy blue, and there hasn't been any attempts to try and escape it, which is great. I think mum and dad should be applauded. They've done a good job. They've played their bit. They've done their role, and they've made sure to keep you kids accountable and steer you on the right path. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, how old are you?
21, nearly 22.
21, nearly 22. I find it fascinating because, like, I'm 30 and we have literally seen the same thing, if not slightly different, but like generally it's the same thing. And I feel so more aligned with your experience than my parents and uncles and aunties and cousins from the generation gone who sold us this dream of this wonderful club, and we're just kind of sitting here decades later, like hoping to see anything like it.
Yeah. Look, yeah, I mean, that's been probably the toughest thing to wrap my head around as a fan. I mean, because my dad would always be raving about those days, those champions he used to watch, the Craig Bradleys, the Stephen Kernahans, the Silvanis and all of that. And we'd always watch highlights and replays, and whenever they'd be on Channel 7, like the grand final marathons and whatnot, he'd show me the matches and we'd talk about those Carlton grand finals. And I remember watching the 1970 grand final with him when Jezelenko took that famous mark, and I was just stunned. Firstly, just the atmosphere on the day and the spirit and the toughness on the field and the willingness to fight for the club. I think we were down by 40 odd points at halftime and came back and won that grand final. And it's just that grit that I really hope we get to see now. Because, from his perspective, he's watching back like he's seen that. So he's watching back on those highlights like, wow, like those were so good. But for me, it's almost like a bit of a mystery. It's like I can see it, but do I really believe it? Do I really believe that that's the same Carlton club that I'm watching right now? But I am optimistic, and I do believe that we will see that fight. I think this year. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. We will definitely touch on the current group because there's a lot going on, and there is a lot to be excited about. Let's not lie. I know it's been a bit tough over the last few years, but there's a lot to be positive about and optimistic. So how far back does your memory go? Like, what's your earliest memory of either watching games? I know you said you watched the highlights of like the old grannies and stuff like that. But what's your earliest memory of going to the footy and being around the atmosphere?
Yeah. I think my earliest football memory was probably the 2007 NAB Cup Grand Final.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. So I was 7 years old at the time. I think it could have been the first match my dad took me to. Yeah, and we won that grand final, NAB Cup Grand Final, and I remember seeing Kuda play, and I think that was probably my first and last memories of seeing like Kuda play. Yeah, and I vividly remember watching that game in the heavens of level 4, and yeah, that was pretty cool to see. As one of your earliest Carlton memories, and you're seeing. I know it was only a NAB Cup Grand Final, but it was still that winning feeling. So I thought, wow, like this is great, and ever since then, it's just been getting to the footy as much as I can each week with my old man. And also the family fun days. I really remember from the early years as well. A few open training sessions too. I think my first one was around about 2007, maybe 2008 as well. Remember getting photos with like David Teague as he was a player, and the Brad Fishers and the early days of Mark Murphy and Simo and Betts. And I remember it was cold days at Visy Park. It was raining mornings, those open training sessions. But yeah, there was just a special vibe around the club. I felt like the players from that group, maybe it was because I was young, but they were just really approachable. They were giving with their time, happy to take photos and sign and just get really close to the fans back then. And I saw a lot of that in the family fun days. Went through my teens, I'd say as well. Went went to most of them during my teens. But yeah, I haven't been to a family fun day really since during the COVID affected era, we could say. But yeah. So those were my early memories.
They were fun times. They were exciting times. I mean, I'll be honest. Like I do remember kind of the early 2000s. I obviously remember Kuda playing early 2000s, but it really was a bit of a blur because we were losing pretty badly, and a lot of the players were coming and going. They were top ups. They were a little bit older, or they just whatever. They were filling a need on the list, and it was a bit for a couple of years it was pretty dark. And that group that you talk of, the Murphys, the Gibbs, the Judd, the Favola, the Simos, the Betts, that was a brand new feeling. I remember it really kicking in my memory. And I remember the same thing as well. It was so fresh and so new and so, I don't know, green. And I mean, I just felt like we got 3 number 1 draft picks. We got Chris Judd. Like, how can we not win a premiership? How does this group not rise up? And I kind of just had this blind faith that because we had suffered and then we finally got the picks and got the good players, I just felt like naturally it would happen. And it looked like it was going to happen up until pretty much midway through 2012. And then, with your fingers, it kind of just evaporated. But what do you remember about that group? Because that was really the first big labeled rebuild that we had gone through. So you mentioned Betts and that, did you get to many of those finals that we played in 29, 10 and 11?
Got to all of those finals that were in Melbourne. And definitely that was the first Carlton group where, that Carlton feeling is ingrained in my mind of what it is to be up and about and winning and just excited, and the atmosphere was electric. That's definitely that first Carlton group, with the Murphys and Gibbs and Judds running through the middle. And I was also a big fan of Andrew Carazzo. I thought it was just a fantastic role player. And Simo was in his prime, and you had the three amigos up forward, and it was just so exciting. I feel like our spine wasn't in a way as strong as what it is now or what it can be now. I mean, we had Jared Wade and Lockie Henderson and those types of players, but I feel like it was just the group around them which just really gelled and had that chemistry and connectedness on the field. And that's what brought that Carlton electricity, especially at those finals. And yeah, I just remember watching in awe, especially that 2011 and then, the 2013 finals, which we speak a lot about. But yeah, I feel like if we can bring back that electricity, starting with just I guess it comes from just the chemistry of the players, just knowing each other's roles. Because I feel like we had a lot of role players in those teams, and they played them well, and that's what got us far. I mean, Nick Duigan kicking goals in the final as well. I mean, that was just terrific. Like, we haven't seen something like that for so long. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to now. But yeah, those guys running through the middle, yeah, that was definitely the first time as a Carlton fan where I was like, wow, like, look at this. You got Juddy, you got Murphy, you got Gibbs, and they're all reading each other. They all got each other's backs, and they just know where the ball is going. Judd's got those fantastic handballs that are just flying out of nowhere and always hitting a target. And then it's the lead up kick, and Jared Waite's taking it out in front and dishing it off to like a Chris Yaron or Jeff Garland, and it's into the goals. And just the eruption of the crowd was just something, I haven't felt that for a long time, and I'm looking forward to that again, definitely.
Yeah, there's something about, you touched on it just then, like there's something about the electricity of the crowd.
Yeah,
obviously there's a few clubs that probably have it. I would assume, Richmond definitely have it, that noise. Collingwood definitely have it. The Bombers, yeah, they kind of have it. But like, considering how little success we've seen, when you do get those moments like that 2013 elimination final and you do hear that noise, it kind of makes you think like, wow, imagine when this becomes a little bit more regular, like when we're winning 12 plus games in a season and playing in elimination finals and semi-finals and hopefully prelims and grannies. Like, I would hope that with the group that we've got now and the way we've rebuilt and the way that we've structured the list, that we have like a good 6-year period where it's just consistently enjoyable. And I think that's, I don't know, maybe you can shed some light. Like, is that what keeps you hopeful? Like, wow, when this does turn around, like, it's going to be really fun?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I'd like to say I'm a pretty optimistic fan as a whole. My friendship group of Carlton fans, we all are optimistic. We can be realistic, but optimistic, and we do remember those times. And I think now is the time to just go. I mean, our players aren't that young draftee age bracket anymore. They're in their mid-20s now, and I feel like now is that time. Now is that time where we will see that. You've got your players like the Zach Fishers that I feel like will take that next step, and the Paddy Dows, and those are the ones that will get us to that next stage of electricity that we did feel on the field. I couldn't be more excited for it. Yeah.
Well, let's touch on the group. So I feel like rebuild 1, which we'll call the one where, Gibbs, Murphy and all of that. I feel like we built the midfield and the engine room first and then sort of tried to fill in gaps later. Whereas this time around, for me, it's very clear we've done it a little differently. We built the spine first and then we added the midfielders later, Wiedering and Harry and Charlie and whatnot. And then, 3 years later, we draft, Sam Walsh and then we start getting the, the Stockers and the, the Fishers and the Dows and whatnot. So
Yeah.
And I like what you said about like they're not babies anymore, because that's the reality. They're not teenagers anymore. And I feel like, I mean, when you listen to the mainstream media and the old footballers talk about their days, they always generally say, oh, 3 to 4 preseasons and then you're away. So what's your observation of the group now? Like, do you feel like this is the list that's going to do it or not do it? Or do you feel like we're still needing more pieces?
No, I honestly do feel like this is the list. I feel like this has to be the list in a way. But I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, it has to be. But it is as well. And I think it's just, you just see the passion in Sam Walsh as well. And it's just the players around him. Like, as a human, how could you not want to back that up? I feel like it's just about the players needing to give that 100% performance excellence. Like, yes, they'll make mistakes on the way. Like, yes, they'll miss that handball or that kick, but it's focusing on that next one and not trying to. They have to get out of the rhythm of trying to make up for the mistake they just made and just focus on what they're doing now in that moment. And I think that just comes with that maturity on the field. And I feel like when you are that younger player, or just it can come back to a life thing, just younger in life. If you make a mistake, you're trying to make up for that mistake and one up it in a way, rather than just focusing on your excellence in that next moment.
Yeah.
And I feel like at the age they are now, those mid-20s, I feel like they've got that maturity now and that physicality and that mental physicality as well to back that up. And it's obviously led by Sam Walsh. And I feel like just, if you've got someone like him leading the way, and then you've got, your Crippses as well. Yeah. How could you not want to be a part of that? I feel like it will be that group now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you add the mix of, obviously we've changed coach and coaching group. And then when you look at the caliber of Michael Voss as a football, I think as a football person, and then like, this is where I get most excited when I think about Vossi. All right, he's coming into the club. He's going to now work with Walsh, Cripps, and these young up and coming guys below them. And like, I don't know. I'm not a player. I don't play in the league, but I can only imagine like when Michael Voss walks in, you're just like, wow, like I'm going to walk through anything he tells me to walk through. And I think I would hope that there's like a good level of trust. And I'm kind of ready and preparing for a little bit, not too much, but a little bit of patience, because it's a new message and all of that. But I do expect there to be a bit more of a, I don't know, I feel like a hunger and a desperation, and maybe it is that mental maturity, that physical nature of their bodies, but also their mental ability to stay in the moment and not get too sucked into a bad quarter or a bad possession. Of the group, like, who do you latch onto now? Like, do you have like a favorite player, or like who do you resonate with the most?
Oh, I think we need 21 Jack Silvani's out there, man.
Yeah.
Big Jack Silvani fan, just in terms of he just gives and gives and gives. I know he's copped a lot of criticism in his career, from Carlton fans and non-Carlton fans as well. But you just watch him when he's like fully fit and his shoulders are fine and he's raring to go in that forward line. Like, he just gets to every contest. He may not mark every football, may not kick every goal, but he's just busting his gut at every contest. And yeah, I think we just need that hunger all around the field. I just love what he adds to the team. But it's hard to go past Sam Walsh. I definitely would say like the player I'm just in awe of most right now, especially being that same age. We are that same age. I'm just thinking, wow, like, what am I doing? I'm sitting in the stands here, and he's just taking on heroics on the field and shrugging off people like Dustin Martin. So, yeah, I'm in awe of Sam Walsh, definitely. Yeah.
I think the other thing about, what we had in the past rebuild was probably like a lack of leadership with the youngsters coming through. I think that's really different now, because like when I look at what we've got now, like, Cripps is the captain, Doc's just stepped aside as co-captain, but he's still very much a leader of the club. And they're a little bit, older in football age in terms of over that 25-year, bracket. But when I look below them in terms of like the age of some of the players, like Walsh could be a captain,
Mm.
Wiedering could be a captain. I even think someone like a Harry Mackay shows a lot of leadership in
Oh
wanting
yeah,
to be the best version of himself. Like, this is the other part of me where I get really confident in what's going on, because I think 2021, maybe mid 2020 and then 2021, we really moved away from the whole Cripps is Carlton and there's no one else and we've
yeah,
got to get Cripps help. And
oh yeah,
then really last year it became Walsh, Wiedering, and Mackay. Cripps was a little down on form, little injured, little banged up, and
yeah,
things were going on. And these other three youngsters who are between the ages of 20 and 23
yeah.
really now hold the keys. And I think that's where I get really excited as well, because there's good young talent, deep young talent, but also the
Mm,
young talent are mature and they're leaders. So
mm.
that's where I get a lot of confidence from what's to come. And I don't know, like, are you like, do you have like big expectations for this year, or are you still pretty much patient?
No, I do. I do. I think you have to go in with big expectations as well. I think you don't bring blokes like Adam Chera through the door. George Hewitt, fantastic role player as well. Um, and even we're forgetting about like Sard from last year and Williams. I think they will take that next step this year as well. They've had that preseason under their belt at the Blues. Last year was a little bit interrupted, obviously, with the COVID situation, and I think it'll be a good year for them to just they've had that first baby newfound year at the Blues, and gelling with the new boys like Chera and Hewitt. So I think it's really giving us that spine through the middle now as well, and that support that Cripps probably didn't have much of in the past few years. I mean, we're lucky that Walsh has exceeded expectations. We couldn't imagine the stuff that he's been producing. But Chera coming through, especially, and Hewitt, I think that'll be just some very solid support through the middle. As long we've also got Ed Kerno there as well, and big Ed fan as well. I forget to mention him, but yeah, gee, he just gives and gives, doesn't he, as well? So
Yeah, I think I find him and Jack Silvani to be not so dissimilar just because of the effort. And I think over the last few years, we haven't really been able to say it about every player. There's only a select few where you just know what you're going to get. And that's
yeah,
probably something that, we've definitely been missing. And that's something I feel like we have a few more players like that now, where I
mm,
just know what I'm going to get. Even if they have a poor game or not their best game, I like to call it like the minimum standard, like the gap between your best and your worst, and sort of raising the floor of your worst and raising
oh,
the ceiling of your best. And I think Ed Kerno is one of those players that just, in footy terms, he's a little bit on the older side, but I mean,
mm,
he's still very much capable of playing and filling a role, and he's very humble as well. And I think I remember
oh
hearing
yeah.
him speak before the season ended last year, and he was saying, I'm happy to play, but if they decide that my time's up, and I'll be grateful. And I think characters like that are important to have around the club.
Yeah, I just feel like, honestly, after listening to Murph speak on Dill's podcast, I feel like I see a lot of similarities in the two of them, Murph and Ed, just in terms of that bleeding blue for the club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hearing Murph on Dill's show was phenomenal. I mean, crazy to hear what was going on really behind those closed doors, but he just really, really loved the club with all of his heart now. I mean, he can't, the bloke can't raise his arm above his shoulders anymore for his child because club. Back to Ed, I feel like I feel that love for the club in Ed right now. He'll just do whatever is required of him. No questions asked. He's humble about it. And yeah, he just wants to see success, not just for the club, but in others around him, in his
Yeah.
teammates. So
Well, I'll tell you what, speaking of Ed, if his brother can get his body
Oh,
through a full season. Like I feel like that's the real wild card. I don't want to put too much pressure on one player to determine whether we're going to be successful, but I can't help but just wonder, like,
oh,
if Charlie's anywhere near the Charlie that we know he could be,
yeah.
it's a wrap, bro. It's a
Oh,
wrap.
yeah. Oh, especially because he's barely played with Harry, hasn't he? Out of
Yeah,
all the games they've been on the list together, it's been what? I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but very few games they've been in the same side. So, yeah, could you imagine, close to a full season with them in the same team?
yeah.
That's
Well,
the key. That's the key.
I feel like I'm being really, like, Harry kicked 58 last year. I think he's still got some more growth to come. Even if let's say Harry kicks 58 again in 2022 and just does exactly what he did last year. My hope for Charlie is that he can kick something like 25 to 30 goals. And I think
Yeah,
if we get that, some of those close margin losses that we had last year, if we can turn 2 or 3 of them into wins,
yeah,
in addition to some of the wins we had playing better and earning more percentage. I mean, I look at the league now, it's very even, and it's going to be very tough to really break into the 8. But I feel like 11 wins can get you there, 12 wins probably gets you there, and 13 wins, you're
yeah.
locked to get in there. So how do you see the season playing out? I haven't asked anyone yet because we haven't really been close to the season, but how many wins do you think we're going to have this year?
I think we definitely can push for those 12 to 13 wins. I don't see why not. I mean,
Yeah.
when you think about our losses, those were losses mainly because of those 10-minute lulls we had in games, right? Those 10-minute lulls during one of the quarters where we give up 4 to 5 goals and then we play catch up for the rest of the game and we end up losing by 2 to 3. That was just the story of our season. And I feel like I just don't think Vossi will allow those 10-minute lulls. I think he's going to expect excellence and hunger. And with those extra players on the field, like your Charlies that we didn't really get to see much of, gelling with Harry, those are key targets that, if one falls down, the other will step up. And we didn't have much of that. It would always just be Harry, Harry, Harry. So I feel like just, having them two on the field will give the whole team that that hunger to pick themselves up if they do concede a couple.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see why we couldn't get that 12 to 13 win margin. Yeah, definitely.
Love it. Well, it's a good segue into my last question. I ask everybody this question, and the answer seems to get further and further away as we go. But in your opinion and in your eyes, and based on what you're seeing of this group and the growth and what it's capable of, when are they going to win the Premiership?
Yeah, look, why can't it be 2023? Why not? We saw what happened with Melbourne, with Richmond. It only takes that 1 year to really flick a switch, doesn't it? So I'm gonna be optimistic and say 2023. I think this year I expect us to play finals. I expect it. No, I don't think I'm not expecting anything like top 4. I'm expecting like 7th to 8th. But I think that'll really propel us into the following year. And like we spoke about before, the list is at that ripeness now where that 1 year flick can happen. It can happen. We saw it with the other clubs. So why can't it be us, So
Yeah. I'm hoping that the journey of this group it's been a struggle, let's be honest, since the 2015 when we started this list and rebuild and whatnot. And I'm hoping that once they have that year, which we hope is this year, where they succeed a little bit and get to taste success, I'm hoping that that's the step that they need to experience to then say, oh, okay, I'm never letting go of this winning feeling. And we can't go back to those dark losing ways. And I think once we have that year, that'll give them that confidence. And then I'm hoping that we're away from there. Because it kind of happened with Richmond in that sense too. They didn't peak early. They lost a lot. They had a lot of these devastating seasons and they just couldn't get it right. And then once they started winning, like they almost learned how to win, but they never stopped. Melbourne was a little different because they kind of had that year in 2018 where it just everything clicked.
Yeah.
And I know that 2019 wasn't so good for them, but I feel like because they had that 2018 year, they had the confidence that they could do it. And that's what
Yeah.
I think helped them rise and ultimately win the flag last year. So
Mm.
fingers crossed. I'm with you. I'm looking at 23, 24, something like that.
Yeah.
I think once we hit the finals, we'll taste it and we'll never go back, I hope. But
Yeah.
we'll
Well,
see how it
yeah,
plays out.
definitely. Well, I did hear, I think it was last night where Robert Walls did say something about how it's the best Carlton list, in his opinion, he's seen in the past decade. So going into this season, that's something that we like to hear as Blues fans, isn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think this is definitely the best and most well-rounded list that I've been watching. Obviously 95, they won the flag. I was 4 years old. I don't really remember it. But what we have right now on paper is the best that I've seen. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But mate, thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's good to document your story and look forward to catching up with you at a game or two this year.
Beautiful. Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me. It's been
No
real.
worries.